I'm standing here at ground zero. This is where the tornado entered town when it hit.
Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go.
Hey everybody, it's George the Antique Nomad, and I am in Dawson Springs, Kentucky. I am wearing the Dawson Springs senior class shirt from, well, some time ago. The palm tree is not something that we saw here, and none blew in during the tornado, which was fortunate. This video is about the tornado recovery in Dawson Springs. A lot of folks have been asking, how's it going? It's been a while. We haven't really heard much from you since a couple of months after it happened. Well, you can see behind me here a bunch of sewer pipe and trucks, and they are indeed doing some updates and upgrades, so this was the time to do it. There's actually a lot of work being done around town and a lot of work to go, and I'm going to show you where we stand and what we have left to do. 9 months ago, a very, very huge and very, very serious tornado passed through here. It destroyed all of the industrial sites in town. It damaged about half of the housing stock or destroyed it completely. And the town has been trying ever since to rebuild. We were promised by other cities that have been through this that the rebuilding process would happen, but that it would take time. And in fact, both of those things are true. I am here on Labor Day, and behind me are a bunch of people laboring. They are rebuilding the one factory that is going to be rebuilt in Dawson Springs, and here it is. I think it's some sort of logistics and distribution business. But this is being rebuilt. In fact, you can see it is almost done. It's going to be a big metal building replacing the cinder block building that was destroyed in the tornado. The cinder block building was an old building they'd moved into, so this facility will be built to their specifications, which is a great thing. Rebuilding from a natural disaster has a lot to do with the vitality of the place that the natural disaster hits. If it's a place that's doing really well and is important and has been functioning well before the disaster, then a lot of things are rebuilt. If it's a town like Dawson Springs, where the economic vitality had already drained from the community, well, that makes it a little bit harder. You see behind me here that there is a big vacant lot. This was the Buckhorn Plastics Company that went out of business when all the refrigerators that were made in Evansville, Indiana were sent to Mexico to be made. This factory that produced the plastic liners for the refrigerator went with it. Another company was using that facility, but it appears that they are not going to rebuild here. You can see next to here, this lot, which had a spec building that was built by the county in hopes of attracting other businesses, was completely destroyed and is not being rebuilt. Well, these young gentlemen said that they saw my YouTube video about the tornado, so I'll have to let them know when this one is going. It's nice to see young people back in Dawson Springs. One of the big concerns was that we would not have enough people to keep the enrollment in the school with all the houses that were lost, but it seems like that's actually going pretty well, and they've got some bridge funding. One thing that the city has gotten together to do is to start a memorial park here in this empty lot next to some of the historic buildings right by the museum. And you can see they are starting the groundwork for paths and pavers, and it should be a nice little park to remember all those folks that we lost. I believe 13 people were killed in the tornado. The commercial district heralds from the days when Dawson Springs was one of the major water spas of the South. People came here to rest and recuperate and take vacation, particularly in the springs, and to go to the springs and drink from the wells because it was thought to be healthful for you. The temporary facility that was giving out needful things to needy people here has closed down. There are a couple of other places in town you can still get those sorts of items, but we're long past the point of the immediate need. We're at the rebuilding stage. And one neat thing that has happened is we have a new business in town. This building sold. It's been completely redone. It sold for something like under $70,000. And these folks from Spokane, Washington, who had seen my hometown blog, we're looking for a nice little town to move to where they could have fun with their classic cars and set up their business and live above it, and that is exactly what's happened. So Main Street Sweet Treats and Eats is the facility, and we're going to go and check it out. I love the customization and the fact that the jadeite color matches the jadeite in the place of this 1958 Ford. do have a few old pieces over here. The maple leaf is old, and so is the vase, and so is the little jar in the corner. I just love that they like the jadeite, because look how cute this makes this place. Hello there. And boy, do they have some goodies. I wish I didn't have to be gluten-free, but I did hear they have fudge, so I think we're going to try some of that. Hi there, and you're Crystal. And how is it being in town and being open?
It's nice. Yeah, everybody's been very welcoming.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. This is the first time I've caught you open, but every time I drive by, I'm just like, wow, it's so bright and festive in there. It's an interesting juxtaposition. The pump here you see is from the original Hamby Hotel. This was the first water pump for the visitors coming to town when this was a huge water spa in the 1890s and early 1900s. And right next to it in the historic building, we have the beginnings of rebirth in Dawson Springs. So do you make all of this? Right here on site, huh? It's wonderful that you're going to do a cafe here. I mean, I just think expanding this into a soup and sandwich place is going to give it something that there's just nothing like it in the area. So awesome. I am very excited for you. What was their favorite?
Their favorite was the white chocolate.
Oh, cool. Of course.
They're like, it tastes just sourdough. Yeah, I like the rocky road.
I'm standing here at ground zero. This is where the tornado entered town when it hit. The devastation was similar to what you would see in an F5 because the speed and intensity was so extreme compared to a regular tornado. For the most part, the things that were left over from tornado debris have been cleaned up and removed. In the lot next to this newly reconstructed house are two cars that were not towed away that were damaged in the tornado and will never be drivable again. We don't know what the situation with some of these things are. Is it because insurance is still waiting to settle? Is it because there was no insurance and they've just left them there and there's no one to take them? Most of the cars that were flattened were taken away by scrap haulers. Most of the trees in the area were flattened too. This one somehow managed to survive. Zeno's grandfather's house has been rebuilt with a new carport and a smaller footprint, and that turned out to work out very well for him. His neighbors have not been able to rebuild here, as you see, but the neighbors across the street and next door are. Strangely enough, this has been an opportunity to clean up some very old school land lot issues and boundary issues. They are going to be bringing in surveyors to resurvey a lot of these lots while they're vacant. And a lot of people who had the wherewithal and bought lots next to them, this one is building a much larger and more sumptuous house on the lot that they used to have and the neighboring lot. At the same time, you see there are folks living in trailers and fifth wheels still awaiting insurance settlements or FEMA money or other help. And there are some houses that are still in their post-tornado state, have not been torn down. It may be that, again, insurance is a holdup, or they're just not sure what to do with it. It was decided, because of the nature of the emergency and the relatively low incomes of people in the area, to allow manufactured housing to be built in place of houses as long as it has at least a $50,000 value. The one on the left here actually survived the tornado. It was left completely intact and standing, which was amazing because a lot of houses like it did not survive. This one is brand new and has been moved in to replace a house that was lost. Because this was low-income housing, there was funding available to restore it, and so you do see new exterior cladding and new roofs. It will probably be about the right amount of low-income housing to house the people in the town who are currently living in FEMA-related trailers, which we'll show you in a few minutes as well. Here is the new temporary building for the Dawson Springs Housing Authority. They're the ones who ran the 4 different housing units that were for low-income retirees and low-income working families. This building is a new structure next to what used to be one of the housing projects, which is pretty much all gone. The church you see below is being renovated though. Here we see Glen Abbey Crossing, which was one of the housing districts as well. These have been renovated. They were pretty good to begin with. They weren't seriously damaged. nature is doing its own rebuilding. There's a seed table under every house, of course, and when those seeds are exposed to light, well, you never know what's going to come up. So there are all sorts of things springing to life that may have been laying in wait for decades. So at least the plants are having a good time, the ones that survived. This new construction here says it's being done by an organization called the Fuller Center that helps with disaster relief and rebuilding. We have had a lot of help here, and it's been really, really welcome. There's been a lot of help directed towards Mayfield, Kentucky, which is a larger town where the downtown was hit and everything except the county courthouse was lost. And so there's been a lot of emphasis there. So we're really grateful that people haven't forgotten about little old Dawson Springs. Of course, it's not just natural disasters that happen sometimes, and this house had a big fire. We haven't had a lot of insurance fires, though. I remember after Katrina in New Orleans, houses suddenly started bursting into flames, and that seemed very suspicious. We have not had that here. Dawson Springs has had a clinic for a long time. It was actually a larger facility, with the town now being smaller, and a lot of the people who are clients of this place being retirees in the area. The decision was made to put up a much smaller building in a big hurry because they needed something now. And so this probably will be the permanent and smaller home of Baptist Health Deaconess. It is essentially an urgent care clinic and sports medicine rehabilitation clinic at this point. For more serious hospitalization, you have to go elsewhere. This is the inside of the old hardware store. This is the fanciest Victorian building left in town. It's not in great shape. A lot of these buildings were not. They're already 125 years old and needed help even before this happened. The downtown was fortunate in that it was not directly hit, but there definitely were effects. Across the street, we see one of the banks that closed. It has become the City Hall Annex, which is actually a good use because the City Hall was undersized, and it's a good location right in the middle of things to help coordinate all of the recovery efforts. There is a bunch of grant writing going on, so hopefully that will be helpful. And one of the first grants that's been procured is for facade and building restoration in terms of tucking and pointing and saving these old brick buildings, or at least stabilizing them so that with any luck some new money can come into town and do something with them. The new owner of the Day building had just finished all of this front restoration when the tornado hit, and I'm sure is waiting for insurance settlement to repair the damage to the facade. A lot of these buildings are in some form of repair or disrepair, but are at least functioning as operating viable places right now. The one next to the beauty shop just sold for only $10,000. It needed major structural renovation, but the new owner is doing that. So, you know, even bad news is news, and it did put Dawson Springs back on the map. And so we are seeing some interest from outside, or at least curiosity about what's happening here and what the town might have to offer for the future. Just off the old downtown are these eco-villages of hope, which are essentially FEMA trailers. This is temporary housing. They brought 7 in here. The reason they didn't have to bring more is because the nearby state resort park was turned into emergency shelter for a whole lot of people. The state resort park is also the only tourist attraction remaining in Dawson Springs. We have definitely been missing tourists because they are not able to go there. There is funding in place to renovate it and move those people now that there's starting to be places for them to go. Next door is the Dawson Springs Independent School Building. Dawson Springs is the only town in this county that insisted on keeping its schools independent and not merging into the rest of the county. And that has been a big draw. A lot of people with families have moved to Dawson Springs because the perception is that the school is better. It is guaranteed to have funding for the next few years. Hopefully they can rebuild the enrollment. It seems like it's going in a good direction so that they can keep the school independent. Across the street after the tornado, this old house was torn down, and very, very quickly, with the help of a lot of the Amish in the local community, this building, this food bank, was built in the space of about 2 weeks. It's a new metal building, and so this has become the food bank center, which is good because there were sort of impromptu food banks and places all over town that had sprouted up like this. Now there's one place people can go. On the left, the Mexican restaurant has been open for a while, but the facade has been restored recently. There was a large piece of metal hanging like the sword of Damocles over it for a few months. You can see the motel's roof is destroyed and the motel is closed. It is the only lodging in town, so that will likely have to be replaced. It may be too far gone to renovate. Ms. Becky's place is open again. The front little foyer blew off and they just reattached it. Next door there is a new liquor and smokes place that's planning on opening, and on the left is the auctioneer. The auctioneer was wonderful. Cotton's auction. During the tornado, he had an auction over the weekend here, all antiques, and it went very well. The other question, of course, is will the grocery store, the only grocery store in town, be able to survive? A lot of the people in town who were affected by the tornado the most were low income. A lot of them were living on EBT and other government assistance. With approximately 700 of them having left town after the tornado, the big question is, will there be enough business for this grocery store to survive? They are working on shorter hours currently, and you can see that, yes, they are still supporting Dawson Springs and they're still here. Now, I've been in smaller towns that have been able to support groceries of this size, and I noticed that one thing that they're doing that seems to be kind of wise is, now that the economy here mainly consists of the people who had a little bit more money and could stay, they've actually improved the quality of what they sell a little bit. So that may be an avenue for them to stay in business. Sorry about the shaking. There's a lot of gravel because a lot of things are still kind of torn up, partly from the sewage treatment project and partly from the tornado and the things that had to be done then. The city park, which is pretty much long gone, but they have taken away a lot of the pieces that were destroyed and saved what was left. The hope is that they can revive the city park and restore baseball fields, maybe add a soccer field, do some different things now that they have a lot of empty space to work with. Behind me is First Baptist Church. This is one of the places that routinely helps people who are needy in Dawson Springs and the surrounding area. They have a large building here that they were able to accommodate people in and help them with all sorts of supplies and things. A lot of you folks were really generous, and thank you so much for all the donations that you sent. We sent 1/3 of them to this church because they do ongoing work with people and understand the ongoing needs of the community. We sent 1/3 to the Daybreak Star Church, which was running a temporary facility for helping people with things, and we sent 1/3 to Redemption City, which is another place that was doing the same. Those turned out to be the 3 places in town where we felt that the donations that you sent would do the most good and get to the people who really needed them. So thank you so much to all of you who were so generous with both cash donations and merchandise donations. I sold a bunch of stuff and made an additional $500 donation based on that. This is Oak Heights Drive. This is one of the 2 mini marts that is not going to reopen. They had been closed for almost a year during the pandemic. They got open just in time for the tornado to hit, and that was just too much. And with the smaller population in town now, they have just decided it is not viable for them to reopen. Planters Bank is the only bank left in town. They have fixed their building and are open for business. And then you'll see, because Oak Heights was one of the better neighborhoods in town, you'll see that some of these houses are being rebuilt already. This was all completely flattened in the tornado. So it's nice to see that there is return of housing coming here. And they're fairly nice, reasonably substantial houses. These people either had full insurance coverage or were able to self-finance. And that's the reason that these houses are being rebuilt sooner. Houses in the other parts of town where people were not insured are either waiting for FEMA money to come in, or the people have moved to other places and have the lots up for sale. There's actually been a lot of combination of lots. My guess is that Dawson Springs is going to have larger houses on larger lots, and that there will be fewer of them in the future. To the left here, this is the court where those buildings used to be on the left. It's just a horseshoe that goes to nowhere now. There were several 2-story buildings there, and all of them are gone. This whole area that you see that is really empty here, all of these were houses. This area was really devastated by the tornado, and you can see the ones that have been able to build back. There are some we're starting to see restoration of houses that could be restored, and we're starting to see new houses being built where the people have the wherewithal to do it. A lot of the foliage is gone, the American Legion Hall is gone, the tank remains. This is I-69 exit 92 in Kentucky. This is the gateway to Dawson Springs, and I'm going to flip it around and show you what the other side of the freeway looks like. To my mind, this is the chance for the future for the community. Currently, there is just one active business at this interchange, and it is the Ideal Mini Mart. It is one of 2 gas station mini marts that has remained in Dawson Springs. 2 of the 4 that were here have closed because of the tornado. 2 of them are not coming back. There is a lot of undeveloped land and an old dead gas station that used to be a Gulf station back in the 60s, and a whole lot of space to expand. As I've seen in other towns that were on highways that were designated interstates, the real opportunity is to try to develop the interstate footage and use that as a gateway to get people into the rest of town. A lot of trucks park here, including now, thanks to the tornado, a whole lot of tree trimming trucks. There's a lot of work going on now that it's summer and things are in bloom and we can see what's living and what isn't to try to stabilize trees that can be saved. Dairy Queen is the only chain food place in Dawson Springs, and they were closed for a while after the tornado. It has been renovated. It has a new lower profile sign, much shorter than the original, because now that a tornado has hit here, they're going to try not to take chances in the future. And so it is open and viable and operating. The car wash next door, however, they've finally cleaned up most of the rubble. It is not coming back. Well, it's September and it's time for people to be getting back to school. For the first time since the pandemic, this school is not closed and is not being used as an emergency tornado shelter. And for that reason, people are really excited here. It's nice to see things coming back to some level of whatever the new normal is. The school's gotten a lot of financial assistance and is guaranteed to have the funds it needs for the next couple of years while it tries to rebuild enrollment and stay independent. And we are definitely rooting for that here because this is the largest employer in town at this point by far. In the meantime, I am George the Antique Nomad, and generally we're talking about antiques and vintage, but with antique and vintage folks, when we're used to looking back on things and imagining how things were and wishing things were more permanent, being through a tornado where everything suddenly disappears and has to start from scratch again really shows you that we're lucky to have any of this old stuff left, and that we are lucky to be able to have the human perseverance that allows people to go on and move forward after a crisis. I'm very proud of the response of Dawson Springs so far. I certainly hope it continues. We really appreciate all the support that you folks gave us, and your thoughts and prayers are welcome and appreciated. I will see you again somewhere in a fun antiquing venue.
Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.